Hey guys, so I decided to do this video because I created a graphic like early this morning because I was becoming aware, like my brain was like filled with all these different things, and I was becoming aware of all these different pieces about what's going on right now with all of the protests and all of the stuff that is happening. And I want to break down the graphic that I shared because a lot of people saw it and they didn't know what the hell I was talking about. And actually, I think I had one of my followers, and I think she may have either felt offended or she felt like I was like trying to make mockery of like one side of the spectrum versus the other. And I was like, no, I don't think you're understanding what the graphic was about. So I wanted to create this video so I can kind of explain the graphic because it'll help you all understand where my mind is in all of this, with all that's happening. So I'm going to show you the graphic right now so you can see it. Okay, so if you look at this, I called it the Civil War Supporters Strategy Playbook. And what I mean by that is that there are people who want this to happen. There are people who want the left and the right to fight it out. There are people who want to create a new civil war scenario. There are groups of people who kind of want to see all this happen and play out, and they're more than willing to incite violence or to try to make it so that these groups come together. And so I'm going to kind of put them in two different sides, okay? So let's start with what has occurred. And so over the last few years, Donald Trump, he became the president, and after he became the president, he has a mouth and he lets that mouth go off, and he isn't conscious of what he's saying. He isn't always aware of what he's saying and how it's going to affect people. And if he is aware, he just doesn't give a rat's ass because he is all about himself, and he's all about, what he can get out of it. He's an opportunist. So he's all about what he can get and how he can benefit from it, etc., and how he looks. So he's all about himself. And so even though a lot of people may disagree with me, I don't really care because I don't have to. Your idea and your belief in him has nothing to do with who he is as a person. You just pay attention to his behavior. His behavior shows who he is as a person. And so I think words are cheap. I think that someone going around and saying this or that, that's cheap. What you do, that's what matters. You can say a bunch of other things, but at the end of the day, it's what you do that matters. And I learned this with my relationship with my ex-boyfriend, where essentially he would say this and this and this and this, but the actions spoke differently. And I'm sure y'all have experiences with people where they say a bunch of crap and then they don't actually follow through, and their actions are very different. Same thing with this person, this guy. So he comes into power. As he comes into power, it's pretty obvious that he's a racist. It's pretty obvious that he has a lot of issues with women and with women of color and with women who have opinions. So that's not even a question. And if you doubt that and you're just like, no, the media's made him look this way or that way, like if there's one thing out there that shows him being this way, that's one example too many. So there's countless, and I don't care whether you believe the media has been, manipulating shit or not, doesn't matter, because there's too much data and information and stuff to support that this is who he is as a person, this is his character. So he is someone who doesn't really honestly, in my opinion, I don't think he cares for minorities. I don't think he cares for gay people. I don't think he cares for Mexican people. I don't think he cares for Asian people or people of Asian descent. I don't think he cares for women who have opinions, for women who are intelligent. I think he cares for women who are gorgeous and beautiful. I think he cares for women who look like they're from the 50s. I think he cares for people who are going to rile up and do what they want to do to support him. So I think that's what he cares about. So, and that's shown over and over again. So I don't have to make that point. If you don't accept that point, you probably aren't going to like the rest of this video. But this isn't a Donald Trump bashing video. This is a, hey, this might be the way this all plays out. So FYI, for those of you who don't know the entire situation that's going on, this might help you grasp exactly what's going on. So we've got Donald Trump, he comes into power, he starts building his base. His base is built up of a lot of different people. Now, I'm not gonna say that everyone that believed in Trump or that followed or that voted him into office has the same ideals. I think that there are a lot of people that voted for him or that supported him up to a certain point because they believed in what he was pushing or what he was saying he would do. And so I think that over time, that base has kind of shifted around, and that's why the Republican Party and the Conservative Party has fractured in all of its pieces, because people are simply, unless you line up and get in line and you do what he wants you to do, and you make, he kisses his ass, you're not with them, and so you're against him. And so that's why there's a lot of infighting going on with the Republican Party. So because of that, there's a bunch of different aspects to that side, or to that side of things, that has become a bit it's very convoluted. It's not so clear. It's not so black and white. And I keep telling people, like, people are allowed to be conservative. People are allowed to have conservative values. Like, you're allowed to believe and to think whatever you want, because this is America. This is our right. But at the same time, you know, if you, with great power comes great responsibility. And if you are the leader of the country, you are responsible for the country, and you are obligated to honor the country, not to honor just yourself or just to honor your base. Yes, you should, probably support your base because, they got you in office, but you still are responsible for an entire country. So, if I give you 3 kids and I tell you, hey, these are your kids, now take care of them, and one of them loves you, the other 2 are like, I don't really care for you, I don't like you, you're a mean person. You don't just start slapping those other 2 kids around and start treating them like garbage and start doing things that essentially undermines those 2 children. And then while you're over here coddling the other one and giving the other one a bunch of pointers on how to be a bully with the other 2, you don't do that, because that's not a responsible parent. And if you're a leader, you have to be the parent of the entire country, and he's not very parently. So that's obvious. Now, so his base has become really fractured, and there's a lot of different pieces now. And so whoever had conservative values, whoever had certain perspectives, etc., like I said, there are people who supported him up to a certain point. There are a lot of people who still subscribe to him and his beliefs or whatever. They may not agree with the way he is as a person, but they subscribe to those beliefs or whatever because they're getting theirs, right? But at the same time, there's weirdness going on there because they don't know what to believe anymore, because the media, who do you believe, right? There's a lot of shit going on with the media. At the same time, you got his base fracturing and splittering up. So if you're a conservative, and you have conservative values, this may not even apply to you. And this is what I was telling my client earlier. I was like, you're not, she's like, who am I in this thumbnail, or who am I in this picture? I'm like, well, you're not on here because this isn't about everybody in America. This is about what the pieces that are going on right now and what's happening. So in his base, and the people that are getting riled up are these anti-protest, radical sympathizers, anti-system people. They are for less government. They sympathize with people who are racist, or people who are anti-certain cultures, like anti-American, anti-Asian at this point, anti-Black at this point. There's just anti a lot at this point. Anti-women with big mouths, or nasty women or whatever. So you've got these people who are kind of on a radical spectrum, and they're mixed in with the conservatives. So you've got conservatives a part of that group, but at the same time, they're all, it's not like it's all the same thing. It's not that simple. But you still have these radical people who are like what we call sympathizers, because they're like, he's our president, and we love how he is, or we like what he's doing, or we like how he's breaking down the system or whatever, and we're going to support him no matter what. And whatever they say about him doesn't matter, because we're going to stand by him no matter what. Like that's hardcore. That's hardcore base right there. Okay. So then from that, you've got these anti-protest racist radicals, where they're way more focused on race, way more focused on, we as a country need to just be all white, and we need to go back to when it was the 50s and the 60s. Women were in the kitchen, they didn't have mouths, and they just made babies, and they were here to honor my sexual needs, and I'm the man, and I'm the top of the food chain, and I'm the lion. You've got all of this mindset around that. And so there's a lot of energy around those people. So those are the anti-protest racist radicals. And those are the ones who are kind of they would do the dirty work for Trump. So if something happens and he's calling for people to get riled up and to protect him or to do for him, those are the people that you're probably going to see doing stuff for him, because they are the ones who are showing up with guns, who are showing up antagonizing the governor in Michigan, showing up to basically make a point and make a statement that this is our America and no one belongs here. The natives don't even belong here. Like that's even further hardcore in that spectrum. And those people, you can't talk to those people. You can say whatever you want to say to those people, but they're basically like hooked on Trump. So that's not going anywhere, and they're going to die for Trump, because that's how much they want that. So they're going to put themselves on the line for him if they have to. That's their MO. Like, I will die for Trump. So those are those people. On the opposite side, you have everything that is culminating because of what has been happening since he came into power. So you got a large following of people from different races, majority black, but there's a lot of people who are Hispanic, there's a lot of people who are Asian, there's a lot of people who are white that are also mixed in there. That's usually the younger crowd, or the millennials, or the Gen Z. So those are a lot of those younger audiences, or this, like, people who are like, we're done with the system screwing us over. So they represent the peaceful protesters, and I'll get to the violent ones in a second, but they represent the peaceful protesters who are out to make a statement and say, I don't care, I'm coming out with a mask, but if I risk getting corona, so be it, but I refuse to sit by and let another person get killed. And all of this stemming from the murders, and I call it murders because that's exactly what it is. When you take a human life and you're not defending yourself, and they don't have the ability to defend themselves, you're murdering people, you're taking someone's life. So you have the people, the Black American citizens who were murdered by police officers, or by retired police officers or their kids, because they don't know, they're stupid and they can't tell the difference between calling a police officer to come and deal with it, or trying to deal with it themselves, because they feel empowered and emblazed to do it themselves. Those vigilantes, again, coming back to the support and that push from Trump. So you've got all these people on the other side who are basically like, we refuse to let this happen anymore. We're not going to let any more of us get murdered because we don't trust you. So these are the peaceful protesters who are out protesting peacefully. They're anti-police. They're anti-police brutality. That doesn't mean they're all anti-police, but they're anti-police brutality. And they're also anti-system. They're also anti-system because they don't trust the government. They don't trust the news. Same thing as the people on the other side. Now you go up to the next level, and then you've got the violent, destructive protesters. Those are the ones who are the crazies, or the ones who are just angry enough that they're going to push it past the limit because they are done. And they're not all crazy, but some of them are extreme mindset. Like there are people in there who struggle mentally, and so they're gonna go off with the earliest thing. Then there's people who are just pissed off and they're done. And so those are the people who are the violent, destructive protesters, who are probably causing destruction and looting and all that other stuff. And there are people in all of that. And a majority of the protesters have actually been peaceful, but it's being clouded and it's being manipulated in the media and in the way that is being seen by the public, because there are other forces at work that are trying to make it look a certain way. So yeah, you have these violent, destructive protesters. You also have these people who are like, let me break into Walmart or let me break into Target and steal stuff because now's the chance, nobody's watching, right? So you're always gonna have people like that in any batch. Doesn't matter what side you're on. Okay. Now, with that being said, you've got these two groups coming into a collision course, and you've got the extreme versions of these groups that are kind of ready to fight it out, and then you've got this middle group where they kind of they sympathize, or they have a lot more in common with the right than with the left, but they're also mixing in with the left because they don't care. They don't care about the system. They want the collapse to happen. They want everything to kind of come crushing and crumbling down, and they're ready for essentially Civil War II, the second Civil War to start. And so they're all on it for it. I call this group X because I don't really know what to really call them. Some people have been calling them the Boogaloo, but I call it, and then some people call them the Civil War agitators, or there's another term that I heard earlier today. These guys are, they tend to be all white, pretty much all white, bro type guys who are all about like guns, who are all about pro violence, who are ready to fight it out, and then they want to see all this collision happen. And so what we are learning, and what I even saw this morning when I was watching the news, and I think it was the governor of one of the states, he was talking about how they were finding out that people who were protesting, peaceful protesters, were reporting that there are these guys mixing in with them who are essentially going in with a very specific intent to cause destruction and to set things on fire. Like there's an actual intent. It's one thing when you're mad and you're just hitting shit because you want to hit shit. It's another thing when you're going in with the equipment and the intent to specifically set on fire and destroy certain places. And so they're coming in with equipment. They're coming in with hammers. They have been wearing wearing Hawaiian shirts. Apparently people were saying that that's one of their things. This one guy, he was there and he had a mask, which I think people were saying that he's a police officer. I don't know, but I think that everything that he's wearing is a symbolic representation so people can see him and get riled up that are part of his group. And so they're going around and they're starting shit in different cities, trying to make it look like the protesters have gotten way out of control to try to make it look even worse than it actually is. And of course, you already have the people on the protest side who are already either crazy or they're ready to like kick ass, and they're angry enough and they're already being violent and aggressive and destructive. So they're mixing in with that crowd, and that's making it all worse. So instead of having one or two buildings being hurt or being destroyed or being damaged, you're ending up with like an entire block of buildings burning and businesses burning down. Not only that, but I think in one of the statements from the governor, they were saying it was all black businesses or businesses on that side of town, not businesses on the white quote unquote white side of town, because some places still have segregated areas of the city. Like back in Houston, we had segregated areas of the city for a long time. We still do, but it used to be way worse when I was a kid. So you got all of these different components coming together. You've got these people in the middle, this group X, and they're like, we need this to start so we can get the civil war going, because we want to basically take over the country and we want to dominate, and we want this to be a pure country of, white nationalists or white supremacists or whatever. So they're ready to like do away with anything that's going to stand in the way of that. And the only way they see that happening is by riling up his base and trying to get his base riled up enough that those people on that side who are angry enough and who are ready to take action and violence and who are going to do whatever Trump wants them to do because he's tweeting about it, they're ready to go out there with their guns and they're ready to start shit. On the other side, the more that Trump starts like, pushing out content against these minorities, against these groups, not supporting American rights and going against it, and also inciting that there be more action taken against the protesters, even the peaceful ones, because he's lumping them all into the same category and he isn't honoring the process, the peaceful process of protesting. And you look at all these protesters, they don't have guns, they're just going through in crowds and masses, and then of course you've got people getting violent, and then that starts to spin it into another direction. You got the other ones on the other side with guns, they're ready to go. So bringing these two together, and then this is going to basically kick off everything that would essentially kick off like a really destructive and a really unsafe scenario for a majority of Americans. So I was talking to my friend Pam a few days ago that I felt that I was worried. I even told my partner a few weeks ago, I said, I'm worried that because I keep seeing violence in the cities, in the major cities, I keep seeing like these pockets of violence, and I keep seeing like these clashes and these things going on. And I thought it was going to happen leading up to the election. Well, it is, we're leading up to the election, but I thought it was going to be like closer to the election. And so I mentioned this, and I also talked about a dream that I had last year where I specifically talked about a dream that I had that lists exactly what has been happening and the way that it is happening. And so I made a graphic around that. You can go to my Facebook page. You can also check it out because I did I did an article on it as well. But I shared like what that was all about, and so you can see that as well. And now it's happening. And that was last year that I had that dream. But it's crazy. And the reason why I'm doing this video is because this is what they want. They want us to come together to clash. They don't want us to connect as human beings. They don't want us, and when I say they, I mean the group X, they don't want us to see each other as human beings. They want us to basically go into our corners, get into a tribal mindset, and then all of a sudden that tribal mindset is going to kick into gear, and it's going to basically turn into this clash of titans, I guess, where you have this radical right with the radical aspects of the left, and then you have a bunch of people mixing in that, because once you start getting the radical left riled up, and then you start having violence against them, that's going to raise a lot more of that aggression and anger and rage on that side, where more people will come in who are not radical, but they are not going to let this go down like this. Because when you take one of us out, we're all going to start getting picked off, and then it's going to start to turn into something much more dangerous, and we're going to lose control of our country, and we are essentially going to become what Handmaid's Tales essentially has been talking about or showing, which is a very freaky situation altogether. I had a client, and I want to respond to something that she mentioned, because I think it's important here that I comment on this, and I'm going to be respectful of her, because I am not trying to I'm not trying to dishonor people or trying to talk shit about people who are as individuals, as people. I'm talking about the ideology of these different sides and how it is applicable to our situation. So I'm going to kind of respond to this, and I want to share this with y'all so y'all can kind of get my view on this as well. Post. Here we go. So, she says, she was very clear. She said, I'm not going to tell you her name or anything like that, because I'm not trying to like put her out there like that, because she's sweet, and she's trying to just share her opinion, and she's trying to express herself. But I support Mr. Floyd's family, and I pray to God for justice. And in the same sentence, I will add that I also support my president, Donald Trump. So here's what I will say. You're allowed to support Trump, whatever he represents and whatever comes along with that. If you support him, you support all of that behavior. You know, you may not agree with it, but if you are supporting him as a whole, you are supporting that behavior. If I have a brother and my brother has great ideas, and he can be a bit of a mouth off, and he can be a little extreme sometimes, but he pushes himself, and he's ready to like really get into doing some of the things that, you know, we have only talked about. Yeah, that's cool. I'm totally on board. Like, you know, whatever. I will make allowances for your crazy personality, because you can get a lot done. With that being said, the moment that my brother goes out there and he starts to tell people that certain people from certain groups, it's okay to hurt them, it's okay to bully them, it's okay to treat them a certain way, and he starts to praise bullies, he starts to praise people who are the violent ones, who are the aggressors, he starts to essentially take steps to basically try to reduce and minimize the impact or the effect of people who are very different from him, or he doesn't agree with, or he doesn't care for, or who aren't giving him a allowance, or who aren't paying him an allowance. At that point, you are also supporting that behavior. And so if he is supporting that, and it doesn't matter whether you may agree or disagree with the way I'm seeing this, but actions speak louder than words. And he's a mouth off, but his actions are very clear over the last 3 or 4 years. So if you support that person, if I'm supporting my brother and then he suddenly starts to get this way, then what's going to happen is that I have to decide, am I going to continue to support him, knowing that the cost to us and having the progress that we want from our ideology, the cost will be this and this and this, which will probably require violence, probably require a lot of division in the neighborhood and in the community, a lot of people being hurt, a lot of people becoming angry and enraged and willing to kill. If you are supportive of the brother, if I'm supporting my brother and he is being this way, and the cost is all of this, and a community and a neighborhood that is fighting and is stressed and is going through all of this, then I would say that the things that we want or we believe in are not worth it. Because if I call myself someone who believes in compassion, believes in treating people with dignity and respect, believes that I personally believe in Christ and Buddha and all of these really spiritual masters, and they speak with words, not with language. They speak with actions, not with words. The language they speak supports the actions, but they still use actions, and they prove themselves over and over again. And so do what you say, not what you do. Do what you say, you know what I'm saying. So if you support this person, if I support my brother and he starts being this way and it starts causing all of this, then I am responsible, and I have to take responsibility for all of that as well, because I'm part of the thing that is propping him up and giving him the power to be able to do so. So is it worth the price? Is it worth the price? And is the loss of basic morality, basic civility, basic community, basic rights for some people who you may be different from, is it worth the price? Now, people who may support the president, who are, maybe they didn't have easy lives. Maybe a lot of people don't have easy lives. A lot of people come from a lot of struggle. And so just because you went through struggle doesn't mean that you understand the struggle others have been through. I, as a gay man, have gone through tremendous abuse in my lifetime. I went through sexual abuse, physical abuse. I was molested. I was tortured in school and elementary school and middle school and in early high school. I was teased, I was bullied, I was treated like trash. And I didn't talk to people. I didn't do anything to deserve that. I wasn't an ugly person to anyone, but that's how I was treated. So, and I mean, going into the bathroom, to this day, I have PTSD because going into a men's bathroom is very frightening for me because I'm used to going in and being either hurt or picked on or treated in some way, like I don't have the right to be there. So to this day, even though I can go to a bathroom and use it, but when I was a kid, I was so scared of going to the bathroom because of all of this that I remember once peeing on myself because I was so scared to go to the bathroom. And I was like 11 or 12. I was not like a little boy, like I was a little baby. I was a teenager, but that's how much fear was instilled in me because of the situation and circumstances, because that's how I was treated. That's my struggle. That's what I went through. You can't understand going through that because you didn't go through that. I did. And so I own that, and that is mine to carry. I've earned the right to be angry about that. Black people and people of color and people, especially Black people, we've done the worst to them as a country, as a collective United States of America. From the beginning, from the get-go, they have been treated the absolute worst. And even though we completely decimated the Native American population in the country, you know, with the Africans, we turned them into slaves and we used them. And they were tortured. Women were raped. They were lynched. I mean, go on and on about it. And yes, people will say, well, that happened like 200 years ago. That didn't happen to the people today. No, it didn't happen to the people today. But I know from working with energy that there is a collective energy that accumulates over time. And if you have a family that is based in pessimism or in a certain attitude or a certain mindset or mentality, you have a shared trauma, and that trauma carries over into your DNA. You know, that's why the gazelle can get up as soon as it's born and start running with the herd within a few minutes, because it's in its cells. And when you are damaging and destroying a people for that long, you are infusing them with pain and suffering, and you have taken away their humanity and their rights. And so, yes, they did not start off in the best way here. And yes, there have been improvements and there have been changes in a lot of ways for the Black community in America, but they still do not receive the level of equality that someone who comes from a white background receives. And when I say equality, meaning that they cannot walk somewhere without getting some attention. They cannot mix in and blend in because it's obvious that they are something different. And if you come from a mindset or from a culture that taught you and conditioned you to hate and to discriminate and to distrust and to so-and-so, that's still there. And it's never going to go away unless you actively engage in deconditioning yourself. As a child, I was taught, don't go over the bridge because all of the Black people are over there and it's dangerous over there. And so every time we would drive through, my family would drive through and I was there, they always locked the doors as soon as we crossed the bridge, because that is the bullshit that we were taught as children. And when I got older, I was like, this is really fucked up and this is unacceptable and I refuse to be a part of this. And so I actively worked on deconditioning myself because I refuse to be that person and choose to continue the cycle of trauma for these people, for the Black community. Not only that, but treat others as you would have them treat you. Do unto others as you would have them to do unto you. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not. I mean, go into it, people, because you can come up with reasons for why things are justifiable, but at the end of the day, it's really not. So there is way more there that my pain and suffering as a gay man, as a gay Mexican man, Mexican-American man, because it honestly doesn't matter, because I can say I come from Mexican heritage. I'm a third generation American. My grandfather fought in World War II. All of my uncles were in Vietnam. So, but people don't care because all they see is the difference. Like, oh, your name is Maron, you're Mexican. Go back to the country that you came from, right? So it doesn't matter to some people. And even if you came yesterday, it shouldn't matter because this country is built on that mix. So these people have suffered more than we can possibly fathom, and that has carried over after generation after generation after generation after generation. And I know the way I feel when I walk into a men's bathroom because of the trauma and the PTSD. They have to deal with that trauma. Black people have to deal with that trauma and that PTSD their entire lives because that has been a conditioned trauma from the get-go. So the next statement. So I wanted you to understand that. So we can pretend to act like we understand or like we get it or like we're on the same page. We're not. We are not. It is completely different. And you can never understand the trauma I've gone through. I can never fathom the trauma that the collective Black community in our country has gone through. The second thing was she said, I will not support violence and destruction in our communities. And she goes into it. I'm not going to go into too much detail. I believe that if we continue to allow ourselves to believe that there is some great racial divide in our country, we will always be controlled by this government. Destroying our communities will fix absolutely nothing. So there's a couple of things about this. One is, this is not a belief of division. Like the idea of division is not a belief. It's a fact. It's a reality because we have been seeing it for the last 4 years. And with the Black community, has been going on since the moment that the slaves were brought over and turned into working dogs for, their masters. So this is not a belief. This is a fact. Like there is a division that began from the beginning of the country's creation, and it has never left. It has never gone away. It has gotten better. There have been periods in our history where we've kind of not focused on it. And if you come from privilege, which even though I am a Mexican American, I still pass as a white person. I don't have to walk into a store and get all these looks and so forth. And so I can still be considered white. So it's not a belief. And neither of us who are not Black can understand the extent of the trauma that is there. So it isn't a belief, it's a reality. There is a division in the country. There's tons of divisions in the country, actually. There's lots of divisions. And the thing is, if we don't work together and come together and listen to each other and cooperate with each other, then there is no way that we can work through our problems. And if the person that is at the top of the totem pole, the person that is at the top, is speaking with language that is more divisive, that is more incendiary, that is more extreme, and is essentially supporting the division by just focusing on what is working for them and, helping their people, there's division there. Like that person is making it worse. They're actually making it worse. And so it comes down to, you don't have to believe in it, but it's there. The division exists and it's not going away. And even with all of this, we can fix everything tomorrow and have everything be 100% equal. The division is still going to be there. And it's probably never going to go away until we are all like one race and we've all mixed with each other. And so the division exists. It's never going to go away. And there's a division between gay people and straight people. There's a division or LGBTQ community and people who are not in that category. There's a division between Mexicans and the United States. There's a division between Asian people or Asian, everybody who's Asian is apparently Chinese. That's what they've been telling everybody. But people who are of Asian descent, there's a division between them and the rest of the country. There's a division between Black Americans and white Americans, or thugs and the people who are the epitome of idealistic living and perfect human citizens. So that is the division that exists. And even though you may not believe in it, it exists. So it's not about believing in it, it's about acknowledging it and trying to do something about it. And so I don't agree with the violence that is happening. I'm not a violent person, and I will be the last person to take up arms or to take up a aggressive, violent posture unless I have to defend myself or I'm trying to protect my neighbors or someone who is coming for them. If I got to do it, I got to do it. I don't want to. I don't want to feel what it's like to take a life. But this is the world that we're living in. And so these people are being backed into a corner, and people are dying and being murdered on the streets by the people who are supposed to protect us. And so if those people are not protecting us, and if the government isn't protecting us, and if the people that we support, who maybe are Democratic or whatever, because there's fractions there too, and I don't agree with the way that things have been handled on that side, what the fuck do you do? Who do you depend on? What do? You cannot pray this away, because we are the extension of Source and of God on this planet. We are the hand of God. And so you can't ask God to do something that we are doing because we are God in the situation. We exist as the divinity here on the physical world. And so we can pray, but if you take no action, prayer is useless. Prayer must be followed with inspired action and intent. So that is the reality of the situation, in my opinion. And I don't agree with the government controlling everything. I think there are too many things that the government is too involved in. At the same time, there's some things that they should be involved in, like basic care, basic human rights, basic needs for people, so that we, supposedly the most richest and powerful country in the world, don't have people starving on the streets, or don't have people living in absolute poverty, or who are killing themselves trying to support themselves because the system is broken. So, I don't agree with the violence. I don't agree with destroying people's businesses. As a business owner myself, I don't agree with that at all. I don't agree with that strategy or that tactic. So I don't agree with that at all. And I 100% rebuke that. However, I understand it. And I'm not going to act as if everybody has the capacity in this moment to rise to a holier than thou moment, because if that were the case, then there would not be murders happening to the citizens of this country by the police officers. If everybody was on the same page, we wouldn't be having this conversation and I wouldn't be making this video. But this is not the world that we live in, and we can pray and pray and pray. Nothing is going to change that, because we are all different. We are all from different perspectives. Some of us who have privilege, and I consider myself a privileged person because I'm not Black, we have opportunities that the Black community does not get very often or will never have. And so we must acknowledge that we are part of the fixing of this situation. Not being a part of it, not expressing yourself, not sharing what needs to change, not being part of the solution makes you part of the problem, when the problem affects everyone in this country. So you're either part of the solution or you're part of the problem. And in my opinion, it's going to come down to that. And unfortunately, I think it's going to become this big old clash, and it's going to become a very bad and messy thing. So thank you for sharing your comments, because I think it helped me to really talk about this in a way that I needed to. And I don't want you to feel like I'm dogging on you. No, I actually think you had really great and interesting comments. And I think you represent a lot of the people that are on that spectrum who don't agree with some of this radical racism. But unfortunately, racism exists. There is a divide. That's a fact. That's not a belief. The sun comes out every day, almost every day. That's a fact. Donald Trump is using his words, misusing his words, and he's not taking accountability or responsibility for how his words are affecting this country. And that includes him causing the country to continue to fracture, to split, and for violence to begin to be introduced into the mix. And that is a fact. It's not an opinion. It's not something that you have to believe in. It's just obviously there just by watching the data. So I love you all, and I hope that this helps you, some of you, understand what this is really all about and how we need to be part of the fix, not part of the problem. Okay?